I'm Lola.
And I'm Mamuna. Together, we've a combined 35 years of experience within the tech scene in North America and Europe.
We talk about the highs, the lows, the WTFs of navigating the technology industry and answer your questions about navigating tech careers.
This is Lost in Tech.
You sent me something that I did not have a single clue about. And man, the rabbit hole was good. It was so good. So, okay, introduce the audience to this Humane Pin.
Yeah. So for those who have not heard of it, it's Humane Pin. It actually was being talked about maybe, I don't know, I think it was like time is not real, but like 8 months ago, 6 months ago, something like that. Folks started talking about it. Yeah. And what was interesting was that people were trying to understand what was being pitched in the product because the description was very generic and lightweight to say the least. And so it was hard to really grasp like, okay, I'm excited about this thing or I'm not excited. Like, I just know that you can put it on and there's AI somewhere and it tells you things. And then finally, I watched the review of Marcus Brownlee the other day.
Shout out to Marcus Brownlee for doing God's work and telling us what to avoid time and time again.
What to avoid. And it was interesting. I wasn't surprised given how it was being described, but I was surprised at the dud. So maybe we start with like, what problem do we think they were trying to solve for?
I mean, I have conflicting thoughts here. So my first thought is you can't just put AI in something and think that
is AI in that though? Like,
well, so it kind of is, but it feels like a bandwagon thing. So it's like Humane AI Pin because you can talk to it and it talks back at you. And I'm kind of like, okay, I really want to just take that out because I think it does them no service. But I think in terms of what problem it's trying to solve, I'm a big fan of wearables. I am, I'm like an early adopter of as many alternatives to, the kind of hype wearables as people can see, just to try and see, okay, I do want my life to be easier. I do want my life to have more stuff. On the Cornell podcast that we talked about the other day, when I tore my ACL, I built my leg brace into a wearable device, right? So I feel like I'm always really interested in like, something that could maybe fix
enhancements.
An enhancement. It just feels like executionally though, like it was all just a little bit to the left and the right enough that you lost the opportunity. So I don't think there's a problem it's solving. I think it could have been providing an opportunity. And it was just wrong enough in enough places that it didn't quite nail your use case. You didn't quite hit.
I think part of the problem and why it fell short is because it was a generic sort of, it'll solve something. There was no target, right? So if you're coming in to release a product, you're like, hey, if not for anything else, you can expect this out of what we are going to provide you. And when you leave this experience, you will get this value. I don't think people understood what they were going to get from it. I don't think they understood what they were going to give.
Yeah, but part of that is like, okay, if you were to describe your smartphone today to yourself 15 years ago, you couldn't describe all the ways in which it serves a purpose and all of the uniqueness.
You don't have to.
What would you say?
I think just to start, like, if you had to say one thing, very targeted, in the future, like you'll be able to use this phone to go from point A to point B. I'd say, oh my gosh, that'd be great. I don't have to print out MapQuest papers anymore. That's huge. Like, just that alone.
But they did say that kind of thing. They were like, this is going to simplify your life. You don't always have to be glued to your smartphone. Like, they did kind of pitch this idea of like a vague-ish future state.
Vague-ish, which means if you said, okay, you get to leave your phone at home and you just have to rely on this device. my mind is like, okay, I'm cooking. I can set a timer. I'm going from point A to point B. It'll give me directions. I can take photos. Like there are use cases I'm going to expect this thing to be able to take on in replacement of my device. That's the expectation I'm going to expect.
I see where your expectation is coming, but I'm so much more like tech fangirl in that sense that I'm like
hopeful.
I think I'm hopeful. You know, we see innovations all the time where you think you solved a problem for one reason and then you give it to humans and they start doing something completely unexpected with it. And that becomes the most valuable aspect. And I get the sense that part of what this device is doing is it's saying, hey, you don't have to be glued to this physical thing in your hand the whole time. Here's an alternative way to interact with that kind of computing. And again, unfortunately, because execution didn't quite land, I think instead of landing this inspiration cycle of possibilities where you start trying to do different things, everyone's just like, I don't get it. It doesn't work. And therefore I don't get it even more. And it's just like, in your
mind, is it because people are comparing it to their current devices, or they don't get it because, or like, I don't get it because we don't see the possibility in it?
So I think it's both of those. And then it's probably one fundamental misassertion on behalf of the creators, right? Like I think they want to create an ecosystem that does not depend on existing smartphone manufacturers. Like, you know,
sure.
As somebody who's even just trying to get an app in the App Store, what Apple does to external and third-party developers is damn right just levels of fuckery that, you know, let's not even get in there. Yeah. So I get it. If you are coming up with a new device, you do not want to be beholden to Apple or Google to exist in the world of your users. But the reason that's a misassertion today is I actually think the most valuable thing this device could do is be a complementary part of the choreography that happens when you're trying to use a device in interesting ways. So one of the things I love and hate about being now a part of the smartwatch, Apple Watch ecosystem is there are times when I want some of the things I get with my Apple Watch, but I don't want to wear the watch. I'd love to be able to wear a pin. I'd love to be able to wear a different type of thing. And for years before I had an Apple Watch, I was a maximalist on this tech company called Bella Beat, which is like women's wearables. They had necklaces, rings, bracelets, like gorgeous jewelry, and I could accessorize it, but it was still counting my movement. It could still track me. It could help me with my cycle. It could help me with my heart rate. Like the tech was accessorizing in a way that I felt really good with. That is kind of what I think the Humane Pin could have done, is stepped into this gap where I don't always want to carry the whole phone. I don't always want to have the phone and the watch. Maybe I could have this other thing in this situational moment. And then I just feel like I have options. And again, the lack of choreography, that entire landscape is gone. And it doesn't matter whether you're Apple or Android, you want choreography between your devices as much as you can get to make it make sense.
I agree. So I think there's a difference between current state and future state, right? So the pin could have the vision of, you know, in X amount of time, we want to be able to replace your smartphone. We want to break those habits, whatever. As a first step, or today, we are introducing a product that will do X for you, right? And set an expectation that, hey, here's what we do today, but here's what you can expect from us tomorrow. It keeps the door open for curiosity to see what people do with the pin, like what new flows or experiences they can create with the pin, right? Versus saying, hey, we're out of the gate, we're going to replace a smartphone. Like that, to me, that's like a very large leap.
Yeah, but they had to get your attention.
There. They do have to get your attention. And they did, right? 230 million in funding. 230 million in funding?
Yeah, I think they raised about 230 million. But so here's the thing. And this is where my electronic engineering training comes back in. I think all of us are naively unaware of how much it costs at a hardware level to power these smart devices that we're so obsessed with, right? Our expectations are incredibly high, but the microprocessors you need are very expensive. And the smaller they are and the more powerful they are, the more expensive. So on paper, they raised 230 million. It's like, wow, that's a ton of money, especially for my little software startup. For a hardware startup, given how badly the device underperforms relative to like our other smart stuff, they probably needed $1 billion. They didn't raise enough.
This is my point. I actually think they should have started with a clear use case instead of generally trying to take on photos, directions, I don't know, all of these different cases. They could have just like done one thing really well and open the door to a couple of others. But at least you have like, oh wow, like I would buy it. Like it is worth $700 and $24 a month for this thing it does.
Yeah,
but it's watered down.
Yeah,
its potential. So you're like, well, I'm paying this money.
Yeah.
What am I truly getting from it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
With 230, they probably could have done, I don't know, like I'd have to think about it. Like what if I were them, like what would I select as, you know, like the intro thing that this product should do to keep people curious and coming back for more? You know, how do you keep adding to the feature set?
I think so this is all from Marcus's video, because obviously, and a couple of others haven't felt this device, haven't held on to it. I think there are two misses in my view. I think if they had focused on it just being a voice controlled device, so this projector thing into your hand where you can basically get an interface to also interact with it in a different way. It's really clever, but it's a really good example of like something you're probably supposed to strip out because it's so clever. It's almost like weird. And therefore you're going to create a question mark in the user's mind. And I feel like in product in general, this is something that it's a bad habit that we have. People think packing something with features is what's going to make it land. Yeah. But again, history is littered with technology that is less feature rich, but much more cleanly packaged. And that's actually what Apple's really good at. It's like they'll find the smallest set of features that they can confidently explain to you in a simple way. So if the pin had just been voice controlled, the use case that I think would make sense is like I always struggle with, I don't know if assistant, right? The voice assistant. I can't use dictation on my phone. Siri doesn't get me. I'm not interested in Alexa. When I had an Android, it was a mess. Like my accent is hella jacked up. So the universal translator, the dictation, the being able to voice memo record, it's like, oh shit, I just remembered. It's like, okay, I'm just going to tap in. It's reminders. It's like this audio companion. Yes. If they had just done that, and then honestly, just because I'm that girl, right? Aesthetically, I don't want to look like I've got a watch on my chest. They could have put a jewelry designer in there. They could have made them look more interesting, a little bit more discreet. Like if I'm talking to someone with a pin on their chest, I'm going to be like, can you make sure it's not recording me, please? Because like, it's a bit too you know, in your face.
It's a cube. It's like a little cube versus a pin.
Yeah, it's basically like, you know, I've got the Apple. It's like putting the Apple Watch on my chest. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I wouldn't do that with anything else. Yeah. So they could have narrowed it down there.
What do you think their next step is?
So I think I subscribe to the all news is good news, even when it's bad news type of thing. And I suspect that, well, let me rephrase that. What I'm hopeful for is that they've received such strong criticism that they can actually use this as a marketing narrative to be like, we know exactly what we need to do. We need a brave investor who's going to go on this journey with us. I would personally pivot and like they'd come back and be like, we're going to make this something that can integrate with your smartphones because we know it's important to the user. And then come back in 2025 with a V2 that knocks everyone out of the park. Like I think the credibility they have as builders previous to this business and the fact that everyone thinks Apple sucks right now with their behaviors and keeping other people out.
The ecosystem.
Right? Like Apple's control and aggressiveness around like, interoperability with other devices and ecosystems. Like there's probably enough wind to go get an investor who wants to help them on that. And I want to see what they come back with. Like I'm here for another wearable. I'm actually like very open. It just needs to work well.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that they can like use the momentum and not just disappear and it's not like a crash and burn.
I was super hopeful for not a wearable, but I can't remember the name of the company. They were a credit card company that said, okay, you can have all of your cards stored in a single card.
So there's a few of those. Yeah.
Yeah. This was back in like 2011, I want to say. And so you could store your cards and then you can like flip through it and decide how you want to pay. It never worked. Like it didn't work, but I was so hopeful and I kept getting their new versions because I thought, okay, like this is going to be the future. It's all going to be stored in one. It never worked. Burn a ton of money. And I feel like the company never listened to the feedback they were receiving.
Yeah.
I'll look it up and put it in the notes, but I hope they don't turn into that.
So you just tapped on something that I think, so with my UX background, I think there is one mistake a lot of businesses make over and over and over again. And I see it in every company I have ever worked in. And we seem to think that as humans, we really care about super apps and super devices. And like we're obsessed with this idea of all-in-one.
Yes.
It rarely works. Like I actually like having my different cards so that I don't accidentally spend, do you know what, on my Uber, I put my work credit card. I've actually removed it because so many times I accidentally put personal trips on my work credit card. And then that's just an admin pain for everyone. And then I'm saying to work, look, I will refund you the $12. And they're like, it's not even worth my overhead. It just looks sloppy. Yeah. So then I look sloppy. I'm like separation. I just need to know so that I can have clearer intent. It's the same with like people being like, oh, this is going to be the next Amazon. Amazon's actually not a super app. Amazon is all about next day delivery. You are trying to do social media plus music plus ticketing all in one app. Doesn't make any sense to me, right? Like I think we are obsessed with the all-in-one and over again, it's such a hard thing to nail. And psychologically, when things are clearly separate, we have a much easier time understanding it and using it. And it's the same with like this neobank is going to take over all the banks. When I worked in finance, I'm like, I don't know about you, but when I open my smartphone, I have a gang of banks. And it's like 4 or 5 apps because this is where I put my savings. This is where I do my everyday banking. This is the one I share with my husband. I don't like to mix them up. I don't want to put all my risk in one place. I'm not going to go for your super bank. It doesn't work. I'm like, maybe someone correct me, but like all in one, not going to happen. This device, they need to kill the all in one and just go hard on that one. Like you said, focus in on that one thing you're going to do really well and then choreograph it with the rest of the tech.
Exactly. Build it into people's life. Like how do people do that thing today?
Sense. Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. And then enhance it.
Yeah.
Enhance what they are doing with your device.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to change topics.
Yes.
Because we have very good clarity and focus about what Humane Pin is doing wrong.
Yes.
But there is a recurring topic that we are getting feedback on, we are talking about, and everyone else is bringing, which is working and getting a job in this tech market. And it feels like actually in this world, our opinions are a lot less confident. And everyone's a little bit more vague and a little bit more less certain about what it is that they actually want. And it's like the water cooler is hot with this right now. Like everyone is talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you the number of conversations I've had over the past week where people are saying, I want to leave my job, but I'm afraid to leave. And there are these, invisible handcuffs sort of keeping a person stuck in a role that they're questioning whether it's better out there. Is the grass greener outside or should they stay where they are? And there's like it's challenging. We're in a challenging environment right now.
So I think there's one part of that where it's hard to feel sympathy for the golden handcuffs people. which is a very real state where a lot of people are finding themselves very well compensated in jobs they hate, with employers they no longer want to be affiliated with, but it feels like if they left, they would be walking away from a ton of money. And that's, that's real.
I've seen a couple of people, I've worked with a couple of people, not in current role, but I've worked with a couple of people who have been in a similar situation. And at the end of the day, when they make the decision to leave, the amount of peace they have reached at the end of that decision is pretty interesting, because they are very fraught with fear. Before. And then after, they're like, okay, like I made the right decision.
Once you've decided, you've decided.
Yeah.
I think
But how to get there.
And this is where, like, I have so many conversations with friends, my siblings, with like mentees and people who chat to me about like career stuff. Caveat, I don't know that I'm like the primary use case that anybody should be going after, but I've always had a perspective on work that personally has served me very well, and I want to share.
Sure.
I want to share.
Yes, please do.
So when like you were younger and your parents are like, make sure that you never leave a job unless you've got 6 months worth of rent and savings and whatever. So I never listened to any of that. I was always the person who quit a job when I felt that I could no longer stay in the job. And a lot of that comes from, I really like working. I really enjoy the things that I enjoy. And I'm precocious enough, as for those who know me well, that when I'm not enjoying myself, you are going to know about it. And I do my best to avoid being in that like underperformance scenario where like I'm bored, I give a damn about what you're talking about, and I'm totally checked out. And so I struggle with it. This is also where like I struggle to be a contractor, because they don't really need your emotional investment. They just need you to come and do the thing. And I'm like, yeah, this contract version doesn't work for me, because you're actually getting more out of me if I like what I'm doing than you're willing to compensate me for. But the flip side of that is that I have always been incredibly in tune with what my instinct is about what is going to engage me and what I do want to do. And I think in a zero interest economy where the tech industry boomed and people were hiring for fun and just because headcount equals numbers, people didn't develop a habit of asking themselves, like, what do I actually enjoy doing? What serves me? What allows me to show up as a better version of myself? This is a time to have that hard conversation with yourself, because it's going to kick you in the ass. It's like you're going to stay in that job and you're fearful of all of the what ifs. And don't get me wrong, like the income drop is a massive, massive stressor. Like, let's not underestimate that, especially outside of North America and countries. Like in Europe, salaries are not the same as they are in North America. And so leaving a job just because you've got a new fancy, like it's no small decision. But I feel like if you're actually somebody who's motivated to work, full stop, because there's a whole bunch of people who actually don't want to work. So that's a whole different conversation.
Yes, it's different.
It's different. Once you start aligning yourself with the thing that actually drives you, that allows you to wake up. Because I think I've said this before. If you live in a country with winter, there's a Wednesday in February when it's cold. It's dark outside. You can hear the rain and the wind, and you have to leave your house to go to a job. When you align yourself with the type of role or employer that allows you to get up on that Wednesday as opposed to calling sick, you're going to see a whole bunch of other things fall into place. Like your income will do things that you don't expect. Your sense of worth will do things you don't expect. And like the whole law of attraction thing, where like suddenly you're like much more positive and light. And so you seem to like naturally gravitate towards more opportunities. Like there's just this like snowball effect that I think a lot of people are not allowing themselves to enter into, because they can't get rid of the fear and they're stuck in the, I can't walk away from this. And it limits their long-term potential, I think.
So, I mean, I think some of the fears I've heard are the financial.
Yeah.
There's the role. So they've been over promoted in their role and they want that one. So I've been a director and I want to find another director role.
Yeah.
It's like, well, do you have a director experience, or were you just promoted because you've been somewhere long enough to get that promotion?
Yeah.
But if a person is living with that fear, to then be able to separate and say, okay, I know I'm unhappy because I'm thinking about it. Like, I am unhappy. There's a part of me that's unhappy. What is that first step to gain that clarity? You know, because you can live in that sort of sulking place for a while.
I think you have to sit with yourself and get a notebook and just write out, like, what are the things you actually enjoy doing? Because it sounds like a simple, basic thing, but like literally, there's a job you're doing right now. What do you enjoy doing? Do you enjoy the product reviews where you're actually getting stuck into the product? Do you enjoy the deep work sessions where you get to create and you can lose yourself in a Figma file for hours inventing? Do you enjoy the mentoring or the coordination with other people? Do you enjoy the time when you're in the office and you know that physically you don't want to be working from home? Like, just writing down things that you think you know, but actually you've never checked in with yourself. And then sit there and actually read it. There's probably a story that's going to emerge about what you're actually more interested in. The other thing that I would do, so there's kind of like, that's more situational. What type of role, what type of environment? The other thing I'd literally be like is, when was the last time you checked what's happening in your industry? Like, are you up to date with newer things that might be really interesting with you? Like, do you need new qualifications? No, but might you want to try some new things that you've never done before to see if you like them and maybe spend a bit more time with that stuff and move in that direction? Yeah, like, I think it's, you kind of have to be willing to say, no one's going to give me this answer. And if I spoke to a recruiter tomorrow who was like, I can get you any job in the world,
what would I say?
The first question they're going to say is, what do you want? And you're going to have to be like, oh, well, what I've done. And they're like, no. I'm not asking you what you did.
Yeah,
I'm asking you what you want. I don't know how many people could really answer that question. And we had a letter earlier on in one of our episodes. And she'd been laid off and she was about to have her second baby and was looking at job offers and stuff. She got back in touch and she said to me that she had asked for what she wanted from an employer that was looking to hire her. They had made an offer and she said, no, I want to spend more time at home with my second child. I do need the job, but I want to spend more time at home with my second child. I want to work from home and I want this much money. So she asked, knowing that they could say no. And they didn't say no. But, you know, given that she was in this situation, it was like, I've been laid off. I'm going to have 2 kids. I need a job. But then she still went in and said, yeah, but I want a job that's going to offer me these specific things because this is what I need in my life. And she got it. And she was like, that was her takeaway. Ask for what you want. They might say no, but she at least got the answer that she needed to allow her to feel good about taking that job and going on her maternity leave. Unfortunately, she has been laid off again, but it's still an example of, in that time frame, she got that feedback loop, that the clarity she had in her head was something that she could bring to the table in discussing work. The macro environment being what it is still super challenging, but I think that habit of being clear on what you want, that's got to be the thing that everyone's just got to get much, much better at.
I agree fully. I think the thing that I hear often is, you know, the feeling that they currently are experiencing. They're unhappy. They're in a bit of a rut, but there's no clarity in that next step. And there's no clarity in that next step because they don't know what they want. And because they don't know what they want, they don't know how to get there. Right. And so, like you said, if a recruiter comes to you and is like, hey, we're hiring for X role. And you're like, yeah, sure, I'll take it. You get in the role. And then it's the same exact thing that you're experiencing. Potentially, like, it could be you hated doing a ton of product reviews and this company does a ton of product reviews or whatever, because you didn't take the time to understand what are those things that you like. Just like, what are your strengths, weaknesses? What environments do you thrive in? Not having that clarity, you jump right back into the same problem. Yeah. But also, and you're unhappy again.
It's if you don't have that clarity, when you're going through an interview process, you don't know how to interview them.
Yes.
Because a lot of us assume that, you know, we've got to show up and we've got to represent ourselves, which is absolutely amazing. But like, when I'm interviewing someone, part of my assessment criteria is the questions they're asking me. Like, what are they trying to understand? What does that tell me about what they value and what's important to them?
Or what the role needs to be successful.
Right, what the role needs to be successful. And I think you can tell when you're interviewing someone who's just trying to impress you versus interviewing someone who has a really clear sense of what they're ready to do next and is honest. And there's high integrity in that conversation, because I can be honest and I get that honesty back. And I think people who find themselves then going from one job to another and nothing changed probably didn't interview well. They didn't interview the job well. They didn't put themselves in the driving seat and say, what do you need to do for me? And I can hear people being like, oh, that's arrogant. And like, who do you think you are? And there's thousands of people on the job market. How do you stand out? I think you stand out by being clearer than everybody else. And I think I can't imagine outside of hardware.
And in that being clearer, though, I think what you're saying is knowing what you bring to the table and being able to articulate that meaningfully and apply that value to what the company is looking for, 100%, right?
100%. It's that you can say, here's what I'm really good at. This is what I really enjoy. And in the past, when I've had opportunities to do this, here are the types of results that have emerged. And so I'm really engaged with the idea of doing more of that thing. I'd like to understand how much of that thing exists in this role. Like, that's just a seamless conversation. There's no arrogance. There's no ego. It's just facts. This is where I'm at. And I think there's self-selection in that as well. If someone's like, what you want, I don't think we can give you. You're like, you know what, deuces, I'm out.
Great.
Because I've been there and this isn't what's good for me. This doesn't serve me. And I'm going to get all preachery on this, but there is a privilege we have in 2024 that our parents, and if people listening are like the kids of first or second generation immigrants, we know that work was survival. And yes, work is still survival for a lot of people. And certainly if you're a first generation immigrant today, or you're a tech immigrant today, work is survival because you're probably sustaining family members back home. That's a different category of stress. And I totally understand that. But if you are in the position where you are no longer in that survival mode,
obligated,
the work your parents put in, the privilege they earned for you is that you can be purpose driven. Right? You can go from, I just need to make money, to I want to make money, making a contribution that serves me emotionally. I want to raise my kids and I want my kids to look at me and see somebody who is fulfilled by their work. I don't want to see somebody who is just tired and worn down and sacrificing. Like, we are in therapy to unlearn the burden of watching our parents break themselves so that we could get an education. Why are you staying in a job and doing that to your child second time around? Why are you not allowing yourself to say, do you know what? I do earn a good wage. I'm really scared of not being able to earn it, but maybe I take a dip and I can come back. Maybe I cut back and I can come back, because what's going to happen is I'm going to be differently motivated to do something more impactful. And I don't know about you, but like, for me personally, I feel like that intrinsic motivation, the people who succeed despite the economic environment typically have that in stronger amounts and greater amounts than everybody else. It's like they choose to drive forward in a particular way. And I don't think it's like a magic personality, you were born like that. I think it's everybody realizing you have permission
like tap
into that. Yeah, we can all be in that place at some point. And so I hope that we start. I mean, there was quiet quitting. That was a whole thing. Like a couple years before the layoff started, everyone was like, "Oh no, everyone's quiet quitting."
2 years ago, I think.
Loud quitting is what we need now. Loud quitting.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was a whole thing. It never made any sense to me. But yeah, good luck to people though. We hope the job market does what it needs to.
And we are always accepting letters. We want to hear from you. So if you have things you want to share, things you want to ask, we are always open to listening and talking about it, share our advice.
Absolutely. We've made this show for you, and we want to hear your stories. We have our combined 35 years experience in tech. We have an incredible bank of experts to call on. We are your safe space. So send us your tech challenges and we'll help you create some draft decisions through some real talk.
You've been listening to me, Mamuna Oladipo.
And me, Lola Oyelayo-Pearson.
Edited and produced by me, Michael Bussa, with theme music by 031 Mash.
Email us at help@lostintechpodcast.com or DM us at lostintechpod.